Welcome to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch, and this is our college football first round playoff episode. It is going to be a solo episode. Ma and Pops, both their kids, got some stuff going on with the holidays, and I wanted to get an episode out before the first game tonight. So we'll get right into it. Break down each of the games, sort of what I see in terms of predictions. I got Maul's predictions, and also can speak for Pops in terms of where he stands on the game, but we'll get into it. Tonight, we got Bama, Oklahoma, the rematch. Saw them play earlier this year. In Tuscaloosa, Oklahoma came in, got a major victory. One of the just small, I think it was a small note going into that first game, but our Mason Thomas missed that first game starting defensive lineman. He is going to be back this game. On the other side of the ball, LT Overton, the starting defensive lineman for Alabama, missed the game, SEC championship against Georgia. That was very much noted in terms of defensive line strengths and fronts and different looks with players. They're looking to get back running back Jamar Miller, and then also their tight end Josh Cuevas, who did have a really, really good first half against Oklahoma in that game. He's looking to come back this week against Oklahoma, which we'll see how in terms of what that matters in this game, and we'll break that down. I think that Josh Cuevas was huge in his absence in the SEC championship. Him and Jam Miller missed the SEC championship against Georgia. When I take a look at that game against Georgia, the biggest front that I can sit back and talk to in terms of Alabama's offense, I was thinking about how did I want to phrase what I see tonight's game being, and why I think Alabama struggles. Throughout this entire season, Alabama's offense has really struggled when it meets a team that plays physical football. You think about game one, Florida State. They were very, very physical that game. Bama just never had an answer. In the wins that they've had, they've played well and they've won, but in the times that they've really struggled, and especially in the times that they've lost, it has come at the hands of a very physical defense. Georgia, Oklahoma, Florida State, we're seeing Oklahoma again. If there is one thing that I can 100% guarantee is that Oklahoma is going to come out and be very physical. And I think that what you're going to see out of Oklahoma is they are going to replicate a lot of the personnel and a lot of the schemes that Georgia ran in the SEC championship. Georgia really rushed the offensive line in terms of blitz. They had a lot of twist up front, really struggled with protection for Ty. I think that there was plays in that game that he could have made. However, Ty's been off, especially when you take a look at the second half of the season. Really since that, I would say that Missouri game, Alabama's on the downhill trend. They got lucky with Missouri there at the end of the game, had to come back to win against South Carolina, struggled at Auburn, lost versus Oklahoma, got blown out in the SEC championship by Georgia. I think it's a very clear state that Alabama has really sort of, it would be a generous thing to say that they are just maintaining their level of play. I would say each and every single week they've gotten worse, which is not what you want to see out of a playoff team. Oklahoma, I think that if anything, their defense has played very consistent. If there's any part of Oklahoma as an Oklahoma fan to be worried about, it's their offense. They have had that regression. The same Alabama as a whole has had regression, but Oklahoma's offense, when we start off looking at the beginning of the year, I think through week 4 or 5, I was asking, is Mateer the Heisman favorite? Is Mateer the front runner? Is Oklahoma the best team in the nation based upon how they're playing thus far 5 weeks into the season? Mateer hurts his hand, and from that point forward, you really saw him, he came back early for that Texas game, didn't look good, turned the ball over. They ended up getting blown out by Texas. From that standpoint, their offense has yet to click since that game against really good competition. It's why I think the Vegas line, we saw Alabama leading the Vegas line a few weeks ago, 1.5 point favorite, and now Oklahoma's a 1.5 point favorite, which makes more sense to me just in terms of where I think this game is going to go. I think that both teams are going to be physical. Alabama has been out physicaled, I would say, in their more marquee matchups this year, especially against teams that the defense is good. The only game that their offense came out and I think matched the physicality was against Auburn, which is surprising. I really think Auburn had one of the better defenses in the country. The last few weeks they struggled, especially against Bama, and even the week prior they didn't look, as amazing as they had in other times during the season. Oklahoma has looked the part. Georgia's looked the part. That first game for Bama going against Georgia, they met the physicality. That's my question for the offense is, can the offense match the physicality of Oklahoma's defense? And then the other point to that is when you think about that first game, it's a 2-point game. What happened? Bama had 3 turnovers. One was a pick six. And the other 2 were inside their own territory that immediately led to points, 17 points. You lose by 2, you gave away 17 free. That's a huge swing. That's a huge, huge swing. I look at tonight's game, and I think it's going to come down to exactly that, turnovers. You look at Oklahoma's last game against LSU, and they were very, very fortunate to get away with a win against LSU, of which LSU hasn't looked the most dominant team in the world, especially since the game at Clemson. They have really been on the downward path, firing Brian Kelly, benching Nussmeier, going with the backup QB, all the turmoil. And this is before even the Lane Kiffin drama really took off. They were a team in disarray. They gave Oklahoma everything they wanted. Now, whether Oklahoma went into that game asleep, however you want to look at it from that standpoint, they did not look good. They did not arise to the occasion in terms of really going into the playoffs full steam. Struggled in that game. For both teams, their offenses struggle. Mateer has struggled. Ty Simpson struggled. The running game for Oklahoma, I think, is better than Bama's by a mile, just based upon how Bama's played the last few weeks, but at no point would I consider it good. Both quarterbacks, I think, are going to be given multiple opportunities in the game. I don't want to say win the game, but to not cost their team the game. Turnovers will be the key. Whoever wins the turnover battle in this game wins this game, period. If Bama wins it, Bama comes out on top. For me, I sit back and I look at how Bama has played the last few weeks. They are very turnover prone. It's shown up a lot in the last few games. I think Oklahoma's defense is very opportunistic with turnovers. It's why I like Oklahoma. Now, on the other side, Maul likes Bama in this game. I don't know why. I think that he is just – it's hard to look at Oklahoma and have a lot of faith. And I think that also that logic from Maul is part in tune just to – we've seen how Alabama has come out in these moments under Saban. It's hard to erase that from memory. The biggest thing I can say that sort of gets me out of the Saban mindset is the lack of physicality. Multiple times this year, I've seen Bama out physicaled. I've watched us lose games under Saban. I've watched us struggle with opponents, and usually it was a scheme or just they had a better player, but at no point were they just manhandling the fronts. Georgia did. Georgia manhandled the offensive line that whole game. You sort of sit back and watch that, and under no circumstance had you seen that under Saban outside of year 1 with Alabama. I just sit back and I go, I haven't seen the physicality that I want to out of Bama. That's why I'm taking Oklahoma. I know Maul's taking Alabama, and for me, Pops is going to stick with me, and he's taking Oklahoma as well, which it should be a great atmosphere. 8 p.m. Norman will be rocking. It's gonna be a hostile environment. Now, Bama has went into hostile environments at night before. They went into Auburn. They've been into South Carolina. They've had to go into some fronts that they went into Athens. They've been there before. Bama has a chance. Can they protect the football? If they can, Bama comes out with a win. If they can't, Bama's getting beat. And I think by a lot more than 1.5. Really think it's going to be probably a 7-point game for whoever comes out on top. Then going into tomorrow, it sort of sucks. I will say, of all the things that have transpired over, this week, it's that we get to see one playoff game today, and then we have 3 tomorrow. So taking a look at tomorrow, first game, 12 p.m., which really should be the nightcap. I don't know who scheduled James Madison and Oregon for the nightcap, but that should have been the noon kickoff game. We got Miami, Texas A&M at noon. Texas A&M's 3-point favorite going against Miami. I've really struggled with this. Me and my dad happened to go watch the Steelers play the Bills, and we got up in Pittsburgh on a Saturday. Just so happened Miami was playing Pitt. We were able to sneak in at halftime, get some tickets for cheap, and we were like 7 rows from the field watching Miami take on Pitt for most of the little bit of the second quarter and all of the second half. I think I said this on the podcast before. Miami's offensive line is huge. Like, Miami has size. Miami has players. Malachi Toney, real deal. Real deal. Their defense has players. They have multiple guys that you sit back and go, hey, they got a really good football team. I haven't got to see Texas A&M in person. However, I have got to see them play multiple times on, just watching on television. And you sit back, and Texas A&M can be extremely physical. I like their physicality. Where they struggle, I think their defense is going to show up in this game regardless of whether or not their offense does. That's the whole key to this game, is what form of this Texas A&M offense do you see, and it really comes under their quarterback read. In the game against South Carolina, I think that I've said this multiple times. For every team that's in this playoff, you have seen their bad moments. That bad team is out there waiting to emerge again. At the same time, you've also seen that really good team be out there. That team can emerge again. You think about the Miami team that played Notre Dame week 1. You think about also the Miami team that lost to Louisville. You think about the Texas A&M team that went into Notre Dame and won. The Texas A&M team that was 11-0 going into the last week. You also think about that Texas A&M team that showed up in the first half against South Carolina, and also the team that showed up against Texas. They have the ability to have problems, to have some problems. I sit back and I look at it from the standpoint of Miami's defensive plan. It's you have to contain Reed. I think that if you force him to be a passer, it's not that you shut him down. I think he can throw the ball effectively. It's more you just take away that dual threat. It allows linebackers to play different in coverage. The whole defensive plan shifts around that if you can just keep him contained. I think that if you do, you really force him to make those passes. If he does, you lose. That's sort of how Bama played for a lot of years under Saban, is that we weren't going to blitz. We were going to make your quarterback be perfect, and he was. We lose. Plain and simple. Whose quarterback's on? That, for me, is sort of, I think, the overarching theme for this game is that I sit back and I look at Texas A&M versus Miami, and I go, whose quarterback plays better? Is it Reed or is it Beck? I think that when you immediately sitting back, for anyone listening at home, you probably go, I want to take Reed in that conversation. I've seen Beck cost team games multiple times. That's where, for me, that's where my heart's at, is that I can trust Texas A&M a little bit more than I can Carson Beck in Miami. However, you can't say that with 100% confidence, because at the same time, I've seen Carson Beck come out and play really good football. I've seen that Miami offense play really good football. I've seen their defense play really good football. I think Miami is more than capable of going into the Texas A&M and winning. It also helps that it's a noon kickoff game. I'm telling you, there is a total difference in going to a place at night versus going into it during the day. For me, the key, yet again in this game, it's turnovers. I think both defenses are good. I like A&M's defensive front a little bit more than Miami's. I think Miami has, a first-round guy in Ban on the end that he'll go in the first. But from the overall defensive standpoint, from the entire package of the defensive line, I like Texas A&M's more. I think that that's going to play the bigger factor in this game. I think they get to Carson Beck. I think they created few turnovers. Give me an A&M. Maul's got Miami. I think that it's hard to pick against them just from the standpoint of how much talent they have. They have talent. Like, they can compete with A&M. And when Miami's clicking, they look really, really good. Maul's got Miami in the game, so we'll see how that one shakes out. Then the last two games, we got Tulane, Ole Miss at 3:30, kicking off in Oxford, a little hotty-toddy, going into the nightcap. Ole Miss facing Tulane, the overarching story. Lane Kiffin's gone. What does this team look like? Now, the good news for Ole Miss, their offensive coordinator, who is going to be the offensive coordinator at LSU, is allowed to coach in this game. Kiffin's not, but the offensive coordinator is. So at least you have some, how do I want to say this, predictability from a quarterback. That's what I think about with Chambliss, that you know what you're going to get play calls. Like, the guy knows what you're capable of. He's clearly done very well this season in coaching the offense. Defensively, the new head coach is the same defensive coordinator that you had all year. So from that standpoint, Ole Miss, everyone outside of Kiffin's there. How do the players react? That's the ultimate question. Do the players come out and play mean? I think they do. They whooped up on Tulane at the beginning of the season. I think they do it again. Ole Miss is 17.5-point favorites. I really think that Ole Miss comes out and makes a statement. Why? You get a shot at Georgia again. Why not come out and blow the brakes off of Tulane and say, we are coming to Georgia. We're playing Georgia next week. We're trying to win a natty. For me, Ole Miss, this is it. Like, you've reached it. Like, for all the years that you've sort of been, I don't want to say the doormat, but you've always been that, you've been the stepchild in the relationship. You've always been that kid that wanted to be looked at as one of those teams. You've made it. You're in the playoff. Go get it. Go get it. If I'm the players, play hard. You have nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. Go out there and win. I think they destroyed Tulane in this game. I really do. I think that they tried to beat the brakes off them. I got them by 20. I know the spread's 17.5. I got them by 20. That's just where I sit on Ole Miss. Could Tulane make it a game? Could Tulane win? Yeah. But that's because Ole Miss's players just don't show up, and I don't see that happening in this game. Then the night game. James Madison, Oregon. So this is the problem. Like, I know me and Maul talked about this. I would love to sit back and tell you how this is going to be a game. I would love to sit back and tell you how James Madison wins. The only way that James Madison wins is that most of the guys on Oregon legitimately don't put on pads. And that's not a shot at James Madison. It's more from a standpoint of pure talent and depth. I think Oregon is going to have a lot of depth on James Madison. I think Oregon comes out and the spread shows 20.5. What I can really see them do is just wear James Madison out. Run the football. You keep pounding the rock. Why? And this is just, when I talk about depth, think about Oregon. Oregon has 5-star guys at most of their positions. And they also have 5-star guys that are second teamers, even some third teamers, some brand new freshmen that are just waiting in the wing that are just sub-ins in the third and fourth quarter. Now think about James Madison. They may have 1 or 2 5-stars on the whole team. And then when you start getting down into their second and third string guys, some of those guys weren't even looked at coming out of high school. So now I say that James Madison could easily come in sort of like David v. Goliath and come out and make a statement. I just sort of sit back and I look at Oregon. I go, by the time the third quarter comes around, they should be just gashing James Madison in the trenches, both offensively and defensively. I don't think James Madison is going to be able to keep up over the course of the game. Their only hope is that Oregon turns the ball over and that Oregon's drives stall out and they're having to go for long field goals, especially now, or even better, inside the red zone, they just can't convert 7. They're having to settle for field goals. And James Madison, you got to have talk about a game that every trick play is coming out. That's this game. Anything that is on the table, I am going to pull out and try to make happen. that for me is what I'm trying to do as James. I just don't see it. I got Oregon by 30 points in this. I really think Oregon goes Eugene at night. I think they blow the brakes off of James Madison. That's just me. I know that's a quick 20-minute episode. We'd have a little bit more to talk about if Maul or Pops were on, but they were unable to be on here today. Maul's got, no surprise, all three of us, me, Maul, and Pops, are all picking Oregon and Ole Miss in the evening games. That's the way we see it. I do appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll get back, hopefully the whole crew will get back for the second round, a little bit more competitive games throughout the entire slate rather than this week where about half of them are going to be competitive. Do appreciate you guys tuning in. Time to pull chalks. We'll see you guys next week.